Okay, what we're going to do now, this week at least, is the dinam of lich pension and things like that on Yom Tiv. Till now we're discussing Shabbos. Yom Tiv is a little bit different than Shabbos in many, many different ways. Okay, by Shabbos we say Lahad Ekner Shel Shabbos Kodesh. That's Chabad custom. Yom Tiv, besides Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, Chabad custom Rosh Hashanah, the bracha for every Yom Tiv is Lahad Ekner Shel Yom Tiv. Okay, like the Yom Tiv, everybody in the world except Chabad also says in Rosh Hashanah Lahad Ekner Shel Yom Tiv. Everybody says. Chabad says Lahad Ekner Shel Yom HaZikaron. The Rebbe writes that was minig all the way back from the Alter Rebbe's time, for whatever reason it is, but that was the minig even in the Alter Rebbe's house. Okay, so with Yom Tiv, for regular Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot, all that is. Now, what happens if somebody, by mistake, this could happen, you're lighting Yom Tiv candles, and you say, Lahad Ekner Shel Shabbos Kodesh by mistake. It can happen, because, it's normal.
It happens all the time.
Okay? So,
remember right away, so you can correct.
Okay, if you remember right away within the amount of time it takes to say Shalom Alecha Rabbi with Tech Kadei Dibor, you correct the mistake and it's fine. If you remembered after the amount of time it takes to say Shalom Alecha Rabbi, then you need to make a new bracha. Because you said the wrong bracha. It's not Lahad Ekner Shel Shabbos, it's Lahad Ekner Shel Yom Tov, it's not Shabbos. So you'd have to make the bracha. What? You say Baruch Shem, yeah. Okay, now, what happens when Yom Tiv falls out on Shabbos? So here's interesting. We don't say in Chabad, Lahad Ekner Shel Shabbos Kodesh v'Yom Tiv. We say Lahad Ekner Shel Shabbos v'Yom Tiv. Why don't we say the word Kodesh, Lahad Ekner Shel Shabbos v'Yom Tiv? We don't say Shabbos Kodesh v'Yom Tiv. So the Rebbe writes, because then it could be a question of a hefsik, of separation in the middle of the bracha. Meaning like this. The text in the Gemara in Shulchan is Lahad Ekner Shel Shabbos. That's it. So we add the word Kodesh, it really doesn't matter because it's after the bracha is done. Lahad Ekner Shel Shabbos ends the bracha. Then you say Kodesh because after the bracha you can say whatever you want. But Yom Tiv, when you say Lahad Ekner Shel Shabbos v'Yom Tiv, if you say Shabbos Kodesh, you're really adding a word that doesn't belong there. So therefore, even according to our custom, when you say a bracha, Lahad Ekner Shel Shabbos v'Yom Tiv, you don't say Shabbos Kodesh, you just say Lahad Ekner Shel Shabbos v'Yom Tiv. What happens is by mistake, on Yom Tiv Shabbos, somebody just said the bracha Shel Shabbos, or Shel Yom Tiv, they didn't put the both together, you're yaitze, you don't have to remake a new bracha. Because it is Shabbos, it is Yom Tiv. The candles are for Shabbos, the candles are for Yom Tiv. So if by Shabbos Yom Tiv you say by mistake, Lahad Ekner Shel Shabbos only, or Lahad Ekner Shel Yom Tiv, you don't have to repeat the bracha. Got it?
Rabbi, why do you say Shabbos Kodesh versus Yom Tov Kodesh?
Yom Tov is not the same Kedusha Shabbos is. That's why when Shabbos goes into Yom Tov, right? We make Havdalah. Hamavdul ben Kodesh l'Kodesh. Because it is not the same level of Kedusha. There's other reasons also. Well, we learned, why do you say the word Kodesh? Why do you say the word? Where does that come from? Lahad Ekner Shel Shabbos. That's what. Why do we add Shabbos Kodesh? So we say one of the reasons is because then the woman, by saying the word Shabbos Kodesh, fulfills her biblical obligation of Kiddush. Then when she hears it over the cup of wine, it's only rabbinic, which is equal to the husband or to the man or whoever it is. So Yom Tov that doesn't apply. Because there's no mitzvah Kiddush on Yom Tov biblical. It doesn't say anywhere in Chumash, in the Torah, to sanctify Yom Tov. By Shabbos it says in the Aseret and Ten Commandments, Zachis and Shabbos, the Kachi, you have to sanctify it. Yom Tov, there's no mitzvah. Kiddush on Yom Tov is only rabbinic. There's no biblical.
So what does it make a difference in what way?
Let's say, huh?
So it's only rabbinic, so how does it change?
It matters. We'll get to later. There's some differences if it's only rabbinic, if it's only biblical. If somebody who, okay, it doesn't apply according to the Alter Rebbe, but according to other opinions, if a woman didn't daven Ma'ariv and Shabbos, right? Okay, she does. Friday night, some do. Whatever. She didn't. Okay? So then she has a biblical obligation for Kiddush.
She does it as a husband.
Just by herself. She has an obligation to make Kiddush, biblical. Okay? Now she's going to hear the husband's cup Kiddush over a cup of wine. He already davened Ma'ariv. He already said Shabbos Kiddush, Mekadosh Shabbos. So his obligation of Kiddush is rabbinic. Correct? Her obligation is biblical. Right? So the question is, can a rabbinic obligation of the husband fulfill the woman's obligation, which is biblical? Because she didn't daven Ma'ariv, so she has a biblical mitzvah of doing Kiddush. You can kill two birds with one stone. You can do the biblical and rabbinic Kiddush by making Kiddush over wine. Correct? If you make Kiddush over wine, so you say Shabbos, Kiddush, and you drink the cup of wine. So you're doing both things together.
I understand what you're saying. What do you mean? I did not daven Ma'ariv. My husband comes from Shul to make Kiddush. She said, he's only rabbinical. I am biblical.
No.
So
the question is, there's a Neder B'Yehuda that says it's a big shaila. Why?
So I understand it. So what is the answer you gave? That you can kill two birds in one shot?
No, I'm just saying B'chlal, Derech Hagav. Somebody can not daven Ma'ariv, yeah? A man cannot daven Ma'ariv, come home and make Kiddush over a cup of wine. He fulfilled his biblical and rabbinic obligation. Correct? But the problem is if the man daven Ma'ariv, he did his biblical. So he's only obligated rabbinic over a cup of wine, like we learned. The woman is obligated biblically to make Kiddush. Because we said men and women both have to say, okay. So now the question is, can a weaker obligation fulfill somebody who has a stronger obligation? For instance, a kid is obligated rabbinically to do mitzvahs for education. Correct? Can a kid make Kiddush for an adult? No. Why not? Because the adult is biblical and the kid is rabbinic. So rabbinic, it's not strong enough to do it. Okay. But the question is, how does it work with women? Because can a man who only has a rabbinic obligation of Kiddush, can he make Kiddush for a woman who has a biblical obligation? So the Alter Rebbe holds you could. Why? No, there's a whole argument in Allah. The Neder B'Yehuda holds you can't. Or a very big question he writes. Why? We learned in the past, why if I already heard Kiddush, I already heard Shofar. Yeah? I'm not obligated in the mitzvah, correct? If I heard Shofar already, I'm not obligated in the mitzvah anymore. If I'm not obligated, how can I blow shofar for you who is obligated? I heard the Megillah already. I'm going to read it for men or women who are obligated in the Megillah. How can I do it? I'm not obligated anymore. Correct? So what's the answer? The answer is, Kol Yisrael Arevim Zelazeh, all Jews are responsible for one another. Which means as follows. If you didn't hear Kiddush, I have an obligation to make sure you hear Kiddush because I'm responsible for you. That's the only reason. By the way, think about it. How could somebody who heard Shofar already blow for somebody else? Somebody who heard the Megillah, how can they blow it for somebody? Read it for somebody else. They're not obligated anymore.
Yeah, it's a reading. Is that a bracha? They don't make a bracha.
No, and if they could make a bracha, but it doesn't matter. If I'm not obligated, how can I make you how can I fulfill your obligation? I'm not obligated in Shofar, correct? I understand. So how can I blow shofar for you? Can a child blow shofar for an adult? No. Why not? Because he's not obligated. If he's not obligated, he can't blow for an adult. Who is obligated? I heard shofar already, I'm not obligated. You're obligated. How can I blow shofar for you? So the answer is because I'm responsible to make sure you're responsible. Okay? I'm responsible to make sure you do your mitzvah.
It's not the same in all mitzvahs.
1 minute. They're all mitzvahs. There are Rishonim though that say.
Like Abdullah, we ask a question if you could do it again. Other things we need to
One second. It's not true. 1 second. So there are Rishonim that hold that this concept of arvas, kol yisrael revim zeh b'zeh, that they're all responsible one for another, doesn't apply to women. There's a Teisus Harosh. There's a lot of Rishonim that are of the opinion that the mitzvah of responsibility one for another, women are not obligated. So the question is, if I already heard Kiddush, I daven Ma'ariv, so I did biblical Kiddush. The woman, the wife, didn't daven marry. She has a biblical kiddush. The only reason I can make kiddush for another man because I'm responsible for him. But by women, that responsibility doesn't exist.
Because of what?
Because they hold the din of Arvis, Kol Yisrael Eiv Zeh applies only to men.
Men for men.
Men for men. So they say, so then, if I already heard Kiddush, how can I make Kiddush for you? But the Alter Rebbe holds not like that. Because the Alter Rebbe holds, yes, there's no din of responsibility women to. But in the mitzvahs they're obligated in, there is an obligation of responsibility. That's what the Alter Rebbe holds. Therefore, according to the Alter Rebbe, it's not a problem. So even though the husband heard Daven Ma'ariv or whatever, he can still make Kiddush for his wife because he has an obligation to make sure she keeps Kiddush.
Many times something happens, if I get guests come and you don't have time to Daven Ma'ariv, before the meal, before Kiddush.
Who, the husband or the wife?
The husband, that's for sure.
It's supposed to be.
The wife always has time. My wife doesn't have time.
The husbands have all the time in the world. The
Yes,
wives,
yes.
the women have no time for anything. I got
Exactly.
that. Yes.
So
It's 100% true.
the point of the woman.
If you believe that, I have a bridge to sell. Yeah?
If there's a point of the woman to Daven Ma'ariv after the meal.
Is there a point? No. I mean, she could if she wants, but there's no point.
Why not? No, that's
She's not mechuyev to daven ma'ariv.
But let's say if you Daven Ma'ariv every Friday.
Then she could daven after eating.
So you could daven,
Yeah.
right? And the Rebbe Achol and the whole thing.
The whole thing.
But it's better to do it before.
Let me ask you a question. We discussed this a while ago. You ever daven ma'ariv Friday night? In the Shmoneh Esrei it says vayechulu.
Also after Shmoneh.
One second. It says vayechulu in the middle of the Shmoneh Esrei, right?
Yes.
Okay. Right after the Shmoneh Esrei, we say again vayechulu. Then you come home and you say the third time vayechulu. What the hell is Hakenet chanting so many vayechulus? Okay, so the Alter Rebbe brings down, this Shulchan Aruch, but the Alter Rebbe brings it down. The first one you say in the middle of Ma'ariv, because in the middle of Ma'ariv, Shabbos, you say vayechulu. Why do we say vayechulu after Ma'ariv, Friday night? In case, listen to this. When Yom Tov falls out on Shabbos, when Yom Tov falls out on Shabbos, you daven a Yom Tov Shmoneh Esrei. And you don't say vayechulu in the Yom Tov Shmoneh Esrei even when it's Shabbos. So therefore, why do we say vayechulu Friday night after Shmoneh Esrei? That because when Yom Tov falls on Shabbos, we don't say it in the Shmoneh Esrei, so we say it after the Shmoneh Esrei. That's what the brought down Shulchan Aruch, by the way. So then why do you go home and say vayechulu again? So it says for the wives and the kids that didn't daven ma'ariv, that didn't hear it.
You would think it would say in the siddur that.
No, I know it should say, but that's not. The fact is, yeah, you're right. The reality it should say in the siddur when Yom Tov falls on the Shabbos, you say vayechulu. But the meaning is, then that's the halacha. You say vayechulu again. But in Shulchan Aruch it says why? You just said in the Shmoneh Esrei, right? Because when Yom Tov falls out on Shabbos in the Shmoneh Esrei, you don't say vayechulu, so you do it that way. Okay, next. Now, Yom Tov, when do you recite the bracha of the licht? If you remember Shabbos, we said you have to make the bracha. I mean, you have to light the candles, and then you have to make the bracha. Because once you say the bracha, it's Shabbos. Once it's Shabbos, you can't light the candles anymore, right? Because it's Shabbos for you. But l'cher Yom Tov, it doesn't apply. Because Yom Tov, you could light candles on Yom Tov. From a pre-existing flame, you can light candles on Yom Tov. So the question is, why don't we do it the right way? Really, you're supposed to make a bracha before you do the mitzvah, right? Before you do lulav, you make the bracha. Before you, whatever the mitzvah is, you make a bracha first. The only reason we can't Friday night, because once you make a bracha, you can't light the candles, because it's Shabbos. But l'cher Yom Tov, we could light candles. So why don't we make the bracha first, and then light the candles? And by the way, a lot of people do it that way. There are a lot of people that do it that way. Or another pointer, we light, our minhag is to light candles Yom Tov the regular time, 18 minutes before sundown. What happens if you didn't? Unlike Shabbos, Yom Tov, you can light the candles later from a pre-existing flame. A lot of people have a minhag, Yom Tov, they don't bench lich until right before Kiddush.
Yeah, I saw it on my neighbors.
Huh? I'm telling you. No, that's not a minig.
So the candles last longer.
No, that's not the reason.
They wait till the husband.
They wait until the husband comes home, and right before Kiddush, they ben shlicht. Now, why don't we? So in Shchonot, the Alter Rebbe says why. We don't want to differentiate between lighting and lighting. Shabbos, every week we do it this way. We want to keep the same pattern on Yom Tov. We don't want to change it. Therefore, we first light the candles, cover our eyes and the whole work, and we also ben shlicht, l'chatchila, 18 minutes before Shkir. If you didn't, you could ben shlicht later, but l'chatchila, you do it like you do every Shabbos.
But I know that it says it's the second day, the second night of Yom Tov.
Right, then you can't light earlier.
Yeah, but you can. But it says to wait closer to Kiddush to light the candles.
Not close. It does. The second day is
discussions. Because you can ben shlicht as soon as Shabbos is over.
right.
But it says to wait till
That's because of a shalav and shechion, but it's not necessarily our custom.
No, I saw it in our publication.
This kashrus is not Torah Shebiksav.
That's what my husband is saying.
Oh, great minds think alike.
But if they say it,
He says it.
The voice may call us.
Do me a favor.
What are you saying?
Nothing. So he says in the book that thinks it's Chabad customs, right? So you should make Kiddush the second night.
We should.
Well, I'll discuss the reason for that later when we get there. Okay?
Also, I mean, like I grew up with lights and candles, Shabbos. Say a bracha, cover your eyes.
No, cover your eyes, say the bracha.
And then you look at the candles, and then you say the Yehiratza. This is how we grew up, right?
No.
Is there any Indian that there's no hefsek of anything? Bracha is done, like somebody came new to the family, no, you cannot say it.
You could say it.
Say, no, you cannot say it, it's a hefsek. Right? It makes no sense.
I'll tell you the shaila in Allah. One second. I'll tell you what I'm coming to now is like this.
Exactly what we're supposed to how we do.
Let's say a woman ben shlicht, Yom Tov, and she makes a shechianu. Correctly, she's supposed to. Then she goes somewhere. The husband comes home. Whatever it is, the husband makes kiddush, and the husband says shechianu. Is the woman allowed to answer amen on that shechianu that the husband made? Huh?
You already made. I'll say whatever she says. You already did.
What's the question? 1 minute. What's the question? What's the question?
And we're asking, you're asking if we should say
Amen after the bracha.
Right, but if we should say shechianu when he says it at the.
No, you but say shechianu when you light the candles. Correct?
Right.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Now, so 1 second. When the husband makes kiddush or the man makes kiddush for the women, okay, you're not allowed to talk.
Right.
Correct? Now, if you already made shechianu, you don't need that bracha shechianu that the husband is making. So there are opinions that say when you answer amen, it's like talking between the kiddush and the drinking. So there are opinions in Allah that say you don't say amen. A woman who ben shlicht and made shechianu at candle lighting doesn't make a bracha and doesn't answer amen shechianu. But Alter Rebbe doesn't hold like that, and we don't hold like that. Most of them, most poskim say that you are allowed to answer amen, and that's our minig. We answer amen, even though they really don't do it. Okay. Do shechianu both nights? Okay. Now, what happens? And this is an interesting thing. They see differently than we hold. What happens if a man lives alone or a woman lives alone? Okay, on Yom Tov, Shabbat is not an issue. Yom Tov, she benches licht. You make a shechianu. Then at Kiddush, you make a shechianu. Now, obviously, you don't make twice. Correct? The shechianu is on the Yom Tov. So the question is, a woman who lights candles and is going to be home alone making kiddush or whatever, she's going to be the one making kiddush. When does she say the shechianu?
So I would say a woman by lichtention and a man by kiddush.
Okay, there are possible not like that, but we hold the woman makes the shechianu by candle lighting and not by kiddush, because then it's a bracha in vain. You're saying a bracha. You already said shechianu on the Yom Tov, so you don't make a kiddush. And the men make it by kiddush, not when they light candles. That's the minig. Okay, next. Here he brings down from Mother Poskim that the women also make it by Kiddush. We don't do that. Okay, now, once a woman benches Licht on Yom Tif, she cannot do any work which is forbidden on Yom Tif, right? You can't, it's Yom Tif. Once a Yom Tif, you can't turn on lights, you can't close lights, you can't turn on the oven, close it. I mean, once you bench Licht, then you're Yom Tif, it's Yom Tif by you.
It's Yom Tov, but it starts Yom Tov anyways.
I understand, but the question is, Shabbos, you can make a condition, I'm not accepting Shabbos.
We're talking about 18 minutes.
Once she benches Licht, it's Shabbos.
Yeah, but she can't, if she doesn't accept Shabbos when she benches Licht, we're talking about just a few minutes. After 18 minutes, doesn't matter if she...
I understand.
Right?
Yeah,
One
second. A woman benched Licht Friday night. Doesn't make any conditions. Correct? Second, she finishes benching Licht, the candles, everything. If she forgot to turn the oven on, off, the light on or off, or she didn't cover the cholent pot, it's uncovered, you can't do any of that stuff on Shabbos. Sometimes, though, a woman is allowed to make a condition on Yom Tif, on Shabbos, that she doesn't accept Shabbos right away. A lot of women do the same kippur. They want to drive to shul after they bench Licht, so they make a condition that they're not accepting Yom Kippur or Shabbos Yom Kippur the same din, until 10 minutes. So they have 10 minutes, pointed out to Rabbi, 10 minutes, but then somebody in the house has to accept Shabbos. Somebody has to accept Shabbos in the house. So let's say you're gonna bench Lichter of Yom Kippur, and it takes you 15 minutes to drive to shul, and nobody in the house, everybody's in the car, nobody's accepting Yom Kippur earlier, you're not allowed to do it. You're up to 10 minutes. Okay? Yom Tif Poskim, right, you can't even make that condition for 10 minutes. Why not? Because once you say Shechianu, it's automatically Yom Tif. The condition is not going to help anymore. Because it says Shechianu, there's
Why did you say, Rabbi, it's okay on Yom Kippur?
because Yom Kippur is like Shabbos. That's why I say Yom Kippur is like Shabbos.
Don't you say Shabbat?
You do. It's not the, yeah, but it doesn't. Well, you know what? So, by the way, many opinions hold that if a woman is driving to shul out of Yom Kippur, she should say the bracha Shechianu when she comes to shul. There are opinions like that. A lot of opinions say that. Because Shechianu, like we said, by Yom Tif brings the Yom Tif in, and you can't make conditions. So many opinions say that when a woman Yom Kippur, Erev Yom Kippur, is driving to shul, she should not make Shechianu candle lighting, and when she gets to shul and she's accepting Yom Tif, then she makes the Shechianu.
Not to wait for everybody else to say Shechianu?
No, she can make it herself. No.
Is it better to light where you're like at shul? Would it be better to
No. Not all shuls let fires in.
Is that something that a person should do genuinely if it's urgent?
Yes, it says in Halacha, the condition is only if it's really urgent. Okay, okay, now when the first night of Yom Tov falls out on Friday night, obviously you have to for sure bench Licht early because it's Shabbos anyway. When Shabbos goes into the second day Yom Tov, well, let's go first the other way. If Yom Tov is Friday and Shabbos,
Friday and Shabbat, that's the same thing.
it can be Rosh Hashanah, it can be Sukkot, it can be Shmini Atzeres. But there are Yom Tov that could be Friday and Shabbos, right? Now, then, obviously, Thursday night, you light, the first night of Yom Tov, you light on time. Second night, you also have to light on time because you're going into Shabbos. But when you go one day Yom Tov to the second day Yom Tov, you can't light early, the second night. First night, you could light 18 minutes before sundown, like we do. The second night, you can't light early. Why? You can add holiness, you can't deduct holiness. Meaning like this. When you go from Friday to Shabbos, Shabbos is holier than Yom Tov. Shabbos is holier than Yom Tov. So therefore, when you bring in Shabbos earlier, you're not taking away from the sanctity of Yom Tov. On the contrary, you're adding more Kedusha. But if first day Yom Tov is biblical Yom Tov. Right? Biblical in Israel, right? They have one day Yom Tov, not two. First day of Yom Tov is biblical. Second day, the rabbi said you have to keep the second day Yom Tov outside of Eretz Yisrael. Correct? So the second day is only rabbinic, which obviously is not as holy as the biblical one. Right? So therefore, if somebody is going to bring the second night of Yom Tov in early, they're making the first day less holy for that duration of time, because the first day normally is biblical Kedusha, and now it's only rabbinic Kedusha. So you can't do that. Therefore, you have the second night, you have to light when Shabbos ends. When Yom Tov if it would be Shabbos when it ends. An hour after basically the time of candlelighting you did the night before. Now, unlike Shabbos candles, Shabbos you're not allowed to move candles, right? That's a given. What happens Yom Tov? Okay, this is pre-electric times. Okay, somebody benched licht on Yom Tov in the house, and all of a sudden they need to find something in a room that's dark. Right? Now, obviously, you can't flick a switch on Yom Tov. Can I take one of the Yom Tov candles and go to that room to have light from the candle? The halachos you could.
Yeah.
Why not? It's made for light.
Right.
Let me ask you a question. You go to the door Pesach with Shvei Chamascha?
I was just thinking that.
Yeah, you take a candle. Which candles are you taking? The Yom Tov candle. But it's a simple thing. Shabbos he can't, because there's a din in Shabbos. You're flickering the flame, and it's muktzah or whatever it is. Yom Tov candles are not muktzah. Right? You can light candles from a pre-existing flame. So therefore, if Yom Tov somebody needs the light in a different room, there's no problem taking the candles to a different room and then bringing it back where you need it.
And you can relight them also.
If they go out, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, from a pre-existing flame. But there's another interesting din. A lot of times when people bench licht, they melt the bottom of the candle, that it should hold firmly in the thing.
Yeah.
You can't do that on the second night Yom Tov.
Oh,
No, first night Yom Tov is before Yom Tov,
I knew it, but why not?
because you're not allowed to melt things on Yom Tov. It's not for food and whatever.
There's also have like this kind of glue, which you just take the candle, the glue, and you put it down. It's like you don't melt it.
You can't.
Start
You
making
melt
it.
it. Probably not, because you're gluing. You can't glue on Yom Tov. You're not allowed to glue on Yom Tov. You can't do it. Okay, Erev Yom Kippur we discussed. Okay, let's leave this here. We'll go to Tanya and